I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen's special meeting for Thursday, September 25th, 2019 to order. Purpose of this evening is we have two items on the agenda, the first of which is the public hearing to obtain comment on an ordinance to amend the code of the Town of Guilford, Chapter 148, Building Construction. And we have a notice, and I'll ask that we waive the reading of the notice as it has been filed appropriately and made available to the public. As a way of backdrop, just primarily for the viewing audience, since we don't have a huge crowd here tonight. Early on in 2018, I was approached by a couple of contractors who said that we were missing the boat. We were, from a building fees perspective, and these are Guilford-based contractors. They said that we were by a measure of a third of the cost of most of the other communities that they do business in, and those are our neighbors fully surrounding us and really throughout the region and largely around the state. And that was as a result of the a la carte fee-based methodology that we used. It's this much for a deck, it's this much for a porch, it's this much for a bathroom remodel, it's this much, etc. My first reaction to those contractors was, well, we don't want to be considered business unfriendly. And they said, it's not business unfriendly. I said, you're just missing the boat because this is what the market has as its baseline. And so at that point, I asked Lou, Sandy, and Veronica Wallace from the Board of Finance, form a subcommittee to take a look at our fee structure and come up with a series of recommendations. And I'm happy to say that after doing some pretty extensive research comparing other municipalities similar to ours, including our neighbors, they've come up with a set of recommendations that we move to a value calculation-based policy for pricing of residential and commercial building permits. So to take the mystery out of the thing, basically what happens is the first $1,000 of value on the project is a $50 permit fee. And for each additional $1,000 of value of the project work, it's $12 per $1,000. And the state fee remains the same. For every $1,000, it's a 26-cent surcharge. So you can see the state had already gone to the value model some time ago. What I want to do, to be quite honest here, there's no one from the public other than town employees and Veronica, who's also on this subcommittee. So I would open it up to comments from my fellow board members relative to how you feel about it, and or Kimberly, if you after we go through this board, I'll ask you if you want to say anything as well. So, Lou, you wanna...
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple comments, and really just thanks to everybody who helped to make this happen. Thanks to the board members.
I think, and to the staff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get to that.
Yeah,
Sandy,
yes, I'm sure you are.
Veronica, appreciate all the work that went into this, and staff were tremendous. Kim has been here now for a couple months, but was instrumental in really pulling this together and getting the exact details in place. Janice Plezak, our engineer, Aaron Mannix, our zoning enforcement officer, also helped to kind of coordinate this transition between the two systems. Most neighboring towns, as Matt points out, really are doing this on a value system. And Kim had surveyed a number of those, and we ended up, frankly, at a pricing point that's on the low half of what other towns are in fact doing. So we think this is really equitable. And speaking of equitable, the idea of the value system does have the advantage of rather than square footage, which can be a little arbitrary in terms of the cost of a project, based on location. So the value system is more likely to have a higher permit fee for those properties that will be able to bear that expense more, and correspondingly a lower fee where cost is more important and they're trying to keep numbers under control. So it does make more sense, and I think a lot of towns have come to that conclusion. And you'll also see, as Matt sort of pointed out, the ad hoc formula that we had before 148-8, which is included in the materials that we all have. There's really a hodgepodge of different costs, charges for different things. This program will essentially have one formula to vet for permits based on value of the project. And it's much cleaner and simpler. And Kim's going to give us some examples and walk us through some of these. And she was good enough to again, help me sort of understand some of these points and is here tonight to sort of explain it a little bit. So with that, Kim, I think you had an example and you gave us a sample. You want to come up to the podium?
Hello, everyone. Kimberly Newman Rosedam, building official. Okay, so for the first application, these are current permits that are right now in the system that have been issued. And they paid, for the first one, 11841. They paid a little under $2,000 for a single residence. Under the new calculations, if you look at your lease page 4, under the new permit fee, it'll be around $5,000. And it would be a little bit over $5,000, and the difference would be about $3,100 difference. And the first $1,000 is $50. It's a $50 fee. It's for the first $1,000, and then after that, it's at the $12, or depending on different things, like if it's a kitchen or a bathroom, then it's a little vary regarding square footage and the pricing. But everything is basically at the end will be at the $12 is going to be calculated. And this is current and is within with our neighboring other areas, Durham, Cheshire, Madison, and so on. They're all between $10 and some is actually as high as $20. That they're doing for their rate, and we're doing it at 12. So I actually gave you two that are for, one is for a new single-family home, one is for an addition, and one is for a commercial fit-out. And the commercial fit-out one was the one, is the client gave us what the amount was. We are asking that they actually give us the contractor proposal price. Because for a fit out, for a commercial, for a daycare, is usually over $6,300. But that's, so to keep it honest and that in the calculator, we would like to have a copy, you know, we're gonna ask for a copy of the proposal from the contractor who's gonna do the work. And then we will base it off that regarding the square footage.
Can we ask questions? Oh, absolutely.
You brought up the point that I was going to ask about where does the price or the estimated price come from? And especially in commercial construction, you know, change orders are fairly normal.
Right.
So is the permit is based on the initial estimated price, but what happens if it doubles or?
Well, at the end of a project, for if it's commercial, they're supposed to give us a cost calculation sheet that's signed by the architect and or the owner of that building to show us that this is the exact amount that they paid.
And then
and if there's a difference, they have to pay us that difference.
Okay, so,
Of the project that
so
added
if
additional
the
cost.
final price differs in whatever way, the permit fee is recalculated.
Yes, sir.
And Kim, you had there's some state standards for valuation, right? It's not like every project comes in and it's going to be just based on exclusively
Right, there's different standards for it.
the representation of the builders. You're not going to get into you know, there's an objective against which you'll measure similar projects.
Right, we're gonna do all of them the same by this, you know, by the calculate of what they state, whichever is higher. So if they state this 400,000, if the calculate that we come up to is gonna be 300, we're using the 400,000. So whichever is higher is the one we use. But if we're higher, that's the one that we're gonna put in. And we're gonna show the calculated data and how we came up with that amount.
And that final price includes all of the different subs and that type of thing? It's
Yes, sir.
total price.
So the subs, only thing they have to come to us to show that they are actually an E1, P1, or M1, S1 licensed contractors. The reason why S2s, they are able to do the work, but they're not able to pull any permits. S1, the ones with the ones at the end, they're able to. So we have to make sure they're licensed. And that's why they will come to us, or even in our future system, be able to do it all online, and that'll be it.
One of the things we're also doing tonight is we are approving a value calculation policy, which is included in our package, which talks exactly about that. And this is the basis against which you will estimate whether the the contractors are within the reasonable norms.
Exactly.
And new construction or addition for a main floor is rated at $150 a square foot.
Right.
So we have a basis against which we will affix the charge.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
And just to jump in, but just to clarify that, so that's a policy that's identified in the ordinance, but it's not necessarily part of the ordinance, because from time to time, that'll change as standards change.
Yes.
Right, and that's based on, this policy is based in part on information that's available statewide and is applicable
In this market,
in this market.
yes.
Okay.
What about costs? That's not a structure, excavation and that type of thing. Are those permits through the building department, or how are they handled?
For excavation,
Yeah, I mean, say, well, in a development, they gotta build the roads, they gotta build the sidewalks, they gotta put the sewers
that's
in.
engineering
So that permitting process is through engineering,
for that part,
and
yes, sir.
that's going to be a different set of numbers?
I spoke to Janice today, as a matter of fact, and that is in the pipeline, engineering, wetlands, there's 2 or 3.
Okay.
There's other
Yeah.
town offices that have building charges.
So even if it's a single-family dwelling and there's substantial blasting, excavation, driveway work, it still goes under engineering at that point?
Oh,
Even for a single?
For extra
dwelling?
work like that, then that's when the homeowner, again, for that job, they will have to give us and let us know.
Oh, so
Was
that-
there extra
So
work
it's not
regarding
just
that?
structures, it's
Just
whatever the
yes,
cost
whatever the
of
overall cost.
developing
If it's
it.
higher than what they came in and told us, they will have to give us the difference regarding that, a calculated difference after we do the calculation for it.
And I think I know this has been said before at other Board of Selectmen meetings, and I think Kim just said it tonight, but just to say again, when we started this study and realized that our fees were, needed to be reviewed and that they were at the low end of our comparable towns, we did not then jump up to the top. No, we have moved them to a reasonable amount that, what the current product will bear, but we didn't just take it from 0 to 100% or anything like that, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna also add that the charge was to see which system was more commonly
Right.
in use. And which makes more sense
More sense,
equitably.
yeah.
And the fact that there's some additional revenue likely is, from the town's perspective, not a bad thing, but it wasn't the objective necessarily.
Right, and it also simplifies the entire permitting process.
Yes.
And the number of permits that we are issuing. Because we used to issue permits for each of these components.
Right.
With a fee associated with them. So this will significantly streamline the back office process in terms of issuing permits and the billing associated with it.
Exactly.
Correct. So,
So to take that point one step further, there's a checklist in 148.8 now of all sorts of things, pools, wood burner stoves, generators. If somebody comes in with that, they would just pay according to the value of the project. If you're gonna put a $5,000 generator in, you put that number into the formula, turn the crank,
Exactly.
and find out what it costs.
Right, because we do have a charge for mechanicals regarding, in different things like, let's say windows. I actually had a permit that they were changing out 10 windows, putting in 10 brand-new windows, and it was only gonna cost $100, you know? An average window is $250. So what I did, I put it on here, is $250 is each window, and then after that, we divide that by the 1,000, and we times it. So it ends up coming out to like $200, and the permit fee ended up coming out to at least $275, you know, something like, that's what it should be. And instead of it being, you know, the cost is $100, and then they only pay like $40, you know, something like that. So it makes it more honest of, this is what is really at the market rate. It's not something they decide they want to make up, that came to their mind at that moment.
There's also a change in the penalty calculation too, which totally makes sense.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Well, what happened if the owner was doing the work themselves?
Even if the homeowner is doing the work themselves, we still have to actually calculate it as if they were doing it with a contractor.
So you use the
Because-
state number, the square foot number,
Yes, yes, sir.
whether the, that's interesting. So it's not really a cost basis, it's a
Value.
It's the
value.
value. It's the value.
Yeah. Seems like it would be very easy to administer, streamlined. Totally makes
And
sense.
I want to pick up on a point that you made, that we changed the penalty fee for not pulling a permit prior to doing the work. If you have a conversation with the assessor's office about this, it's amazing the number of properties that come in looking for after-the-fact permits, because when they go to sell the house, there is work that has been done for which there is no supporting permit. And in order to satisfy the real estate transaction, they need to pull an after-the-fact permit.
Right.
So this allows us to assess a more significant fine for after-the-fact permits.
Right, I'm getting a lot of
And
those.
also will then, there'll probably have to be some discussion about at what time was this done, or what was the actual value. But the way it looks today, it will be at today's value that they get assessed the permit fee.
Right.
So for those who didn't pull the permits, they may wind up eventually paying more than had they pulled the permit in the first place.
Exactly.
They definitely will because of the penalty, but more than likely because of the cost per square footage of these projects is higher today than the time that they pulled the permit. So this hopefully will keep more people honest relative. I'm not suggesting a lot of people are doing that, but talk to the assessor's office. They get a lot of it. They get a lot of those. They find out that in the building department, looking for after-the-fact permits. So,
Good.
anything else? No? All right, what I'd like to do is take this in two pieces. The first is to approve the amended ordinance to the Code of the Town of Guilford for Chapter 148, Building Construction. Is there a motion?
Well, I would like to make the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have one other person that I neglected to mention, who's Pam Millman,
Yes.
who's indispensable with these types of things, going over the language of the ordinance and making sure everything is
we're doing it
where it's supposed to be. So
That's right,
Pam
you're
is,
right.
Pam has just
Yeah.
been a great help, and would be remiss not to mention her tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you for reminding me. All right, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. The second piece would be to approve the value calculation policy for residential and commercial building permits as provided to us in the documentation attached to our packet and included in the legal notice. Is there a motion for same?
So moved.
And a second? Second. Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Once again, I would like to thank Lou, Sandy, and Veronica for their work on this. This probably was more work than they had signed on for, so I greatly appreciate your time and effort and your professionalism in executing this.
Veronica and I definitely came to meetings, but Lou led the charge here, so.
All right. But I do also want to mention that on the heels of this, as we talked about other department fees, et cetera, the health department has a separate set of fees that is currently being reviewed as well. And the fire department is talking to us about commercial building plan review fees.
The fire marshal's
The fire marshal inspection. So, and those things we can probably expect to be coming down the pike as well. All right.
Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, Kim, for your, is there anything further? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Thank you all.
I did.
Good.
That's so cheap, man.
I know.